Morning, welcome to your English lesson. And today we're going to look at improving the punctuation that you use in your writing, focusing on the very sophisticated semicolon and colon. Nothing that's new to you, but I think it's good to have some focused practice and relearning. Sorry, that was the post if you heard a bang. Right, but before we move on to the really, top-notch stuff, high-level punctuation, I just want to talk about fronted adverbials. Adverbials in general, we know, give us the how, the when, the why and the where of the sentence. They're quite often prepositions if they're talking about where things are happening, or they can be lots and lots of different things. It can be a subordinate clause acting as an adverbial. It's any phrase or clause that gives us the how, the when, the where or the why. In terms of punctuation, you know what I'm going to say. If they are at the start of a sentence and are therefore called a fronted adverbial because they're at the front of the sentence, you must separate them from your main clause using a comma. You all know it and you can all do it, but you just don't always remember to. So just be conscious when you're writing that you do actually do that. And they can be one word. Now, that's telling you when. It's still a fronted adverbial. It still needs that comma if it's at the start of a sentence. Suddenly, comma, it was upon me. Okay? So it doesn't matter if it's one word or if it's a whole clause. Separate it with that comma. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do when you start on your work is just write me one sentence that includes a fronted adverbial to describe one event during the film and make sure it's punctuated accurately, okay? Get those commas absolutely spot on. Right, moving on to what we really want to focus on today, semicolons and colons. Right, they're not very big on my board, but I hope you can see. We've got our semicolon, which is the dot and the comma, and our colon, which is the two dots. Don't get them confused, they're quite different, although they can be used similarly. So, first of all, I want to look at the semicolon. Now, a semicolon within a sentence is stronger than a comma, if you want to think of it like that, but it's not as final as a full stop. And it can be used to join two main clauses. Both sides of a semicolon have to be main clauses. We've done lots and lots of work on identifying main clauses. Remember, we're looking for a subject and a verb. They cannot ever be joined with a comma. Right, so I've got an example up here. The night was stormy. The day was calm and sunny. Well, you can almost hear I had a bit of a pause to separate the meaning. Now, if we look at them in detail, we've got two main clauses there. The night is our subject, was is our verb, stormy. The night was stormy makes sense by itself. It is a main clause. The day is our next subject, was, the same verb again, calm and sunny. That again is a main clause by itself. So it can't stand like that. And we certainly can't use a comma. There are options, but I want to use a semicolon. They're very closely related. They're linked. They're two main clauses that are linked. So it's absolutely right to use a semicolon. So I'm simply going to put it at the end of my first main clause. That's really important. It must go after the end of the first main clause. It doesn't go before the second main clause. So it's joined to stormy. You can't put it on the next line. You don't need a space. It's stormy semicolon space, okay? So don't let me see them sneaking onto the next line. So they're quite simple semicolons, two main clauses that you could either have made into two sentences, you could have used a conjunction, you could have used a dash, but actually we're going to be using semicolons today. They are the most sophisticated version of your writing. Okay, that's our semicolons. What about colons? They're slightly different. If we're talking about kind of strength of finishing, strength of pause, a colon is actually a bit stronger than a comma or a semicolon. But again, we're still not up to the level of a full stop. It's not full stop. Move on. They're used to explain a main clause, to introduce more information, or to excite the reader. It can be. But one side of a main clause, of a colon, must be a main clause. Sometimes they both are, okay? One side has to be. So let's have a look at this one. Eventually I found it a stink bomb. If I read it without pauses, eventually I found it sorry, I put my own teeth in. Eventually I found it a stink bomb. There's no emphasis there. There's no excitement, is there? It's just blah, 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 blah. I want to put a colon in. I want to really excite my reader. I almost want to tease them with what it is that I'm going to find. So I've got a main clause. Eventually I found it. It makes sense by itself. Fronted adverbial, comma. I found it. Subject, verb, makes sense. If I put a colon there, I've got a pause. And this is my exciting bit. Eventually I found it. A stink bomb. Can you see? It changes the whole dynamic of the sentence. And just like its brother or sister, the semicolon, it's joined to the it. IT colon. No space, no new line. It's got to go together. If you can't fit your punctuation at the end of the line, you can't fit your word at the end of the line. So start a new one. Okay? So that's an example of a colon for excitement or for tension. I've got one more example here because it's a bit more variable than a semicolon. So there are several things I hate: marshmallows, celery and Marmite. True story. Don't give me any of those. So what I want to do here is I am explaining the things that I hate, or I'm introducing the things that I hate. So my main clause says there are several things I hate. I don't need any more information. That is a main clause by itself. But I'm then going on to explain. So I'm going to put my colon there. It's introducing the list of things that I really, really hate. And it's allowing me to explain that main clause. So neither of them, when you break it down, are particularly tricky. Okay, you just have to think carefully, and the more you practice, the better you will be. So what are you going to be doing today? Well, the first thing I want you to do, after you've practiced your fronted adverbial, is on the back, there's an example text, okay? On the back of your work, or on the second page. I want you to read it through. It includes colons and semicolons, okay? And it's a letter written from the grandfather's perspective. I want you to analyse it or think about the way that the punctuation is used to create the mood and the atmosphere within the narrative, okay? But focus on the semicolons and colons and make sure you are confident with how and why they are being used. When you've done that, it's time for you to practice. There are 5 sentences that I want you to write out, and I want you to punctuate them correctly using a colon or a semicolon, whichever is appropriate. Let's have some beautiful handwriting as well today because you're copying. They all need one. They all need either a colon or a semicolon. No comma splicing and no running on main clauses. And then the final thing is, can you write one of your own? Okay, that's it for today. Not a huge amount of writing for you, but really good focused practice for these colons and semicolons, which will elevate your writing. Right, enjoy it. Back for more tomorrow. Bye.